The atmosphere surrounding Zhang Ling and the character of Gong Ziyu suddenly seemed to change the moment he spoke about him during a live broadcast, creating an emotional wave that reached far beyond the screen. What had begun as another ordinary livestream quickly became a moment that fans would remember, because there was something unusually sincere in the way Zhang Ling addressed the character, something that made viewers pause and listen more carefully. Gong Ziyu is not simply a name attached to a drama for the people who became emotionally invested in his journey. He represents a complicated mixture of vulnerability, responsibility, determination, loneliness, and quiet strength, and when Zhang Ling appeared to defend him, fans could not help but wonder how deeply the actor had connected with the role. Behind the glamorous images, cameras, lights, and endless attention that surround a successful actor, there are moments when a performer seems to step beyond performance and speak from a much more personal place. This was the kind of moment that immediately captured attention, because instead of treating Gong Ziyu as merely a fictional character, Zhang Ling appeared to approach him with an understanding that felt deeply protective. Every expression, every pause, and every carefully chosen response seemed to carry an emotional weight that viewers could feel even through a screen, and as clips and reactions began circulating among fans, the conversation became less about a character from a drama and more about why this particular role seemed to matter so much to him. For many viewers, Gong Ziyu had always been a character surrounded by contradictions. There was strength on the surface, but underneath that strength was uncertainty. There was a sense of responsibility, yet there was also a young man struggling to understand what that responsibility demanded from him. There were moments when his decisions could be questioned, moments when viewers could disagree with him, and moments when his behavior could easily become the subject of criticism. Yet that complexity was exactly what made him fascinating. Zhang Ling seemed to understand that judging Gong Ziyu from a distance was very different from understanding the emotional circumstances surrounding him. A character can make mistakes and still deserve compassion. A person can appear powerful and still be carrying an enormous amount of pressure. That distinction seemed to become the emotional heart of the livestream moment, and it was perhaps why so many fans reacted so strongly. Instead of allowing the conversation to remain on the surface, Zhang Ling appeared to bring attention back to the reasons behind the character's behavior, encouraging viewers to look beyond individual actions and consider the emotional world that shaped them. For fans who had already spent countless hours discussing Gong Ziyu, analyzing his expressions, debating his choices, and trying to understand his motivations, hearing Zhang Ling speak with such apparent conviction created a powerful feeling of recognition, as though someone had finally articulated the complicated emotions they themselves had struggled to explain. What made the moment even more compelling was the contrast between Zhang Linghe's public image and the emotional intensity surrounding Gong Ziyu. An actor can spend months portraying someone whose personality is completely different from his own, but over time, certain characters leave a deeper impression. They become part of the actor's professional journey, and sometimes the emotional experience of portraying them becomes impossible to separate completely from the memories associated with filming. The long hours, difficult scenes, countless retakes, physical exhaustion, emotional preparation, and concentration required to bring a character to life can create a bond between performer and role that viewers rarely see. So when Zhang Ling addressed criticism surrounding Gong Ziyu, fans naturally became curious about what might have been behind his reaction. Was he simply defending the creative choices of a character he had portrayed? Was he expressing his understanding of Gong Ziyu after spending so much time inside that character's emotional world? Or was there something even more personal about the way he approached the subject? Those questions were enough to transform an ordinary livestream conversation into something much larger, because fans were not merely listening to an actor discuss a role. They were watching someone revisit a character who had clearly generated strong emotions among viewers, and every word seemed capable of opening another layer of interpretation. The emotional response from fans was immediate and intense. Some viewers appeared surprised by how directly the subject was addressed, while others felt relieved to hear a perspective that acknowledged the character's complexity. Online discussions began focusing on the subtle details of the moment, with fans examining Zhang Linghe's expression, his tone, the timing of his responses, and the way he seemed to approach the topic with care rather than simply dismissing criticism. That distinction mattered. Defending a character does not necessarily mean pretending the character is perfect. In fact, the strongest defense can sometimes come from acknowledging imperfections while explaining why those imperfections exist. Gong Ziyu is compelling precisely because he is not presented as an emotionless figure who always knows the correct answer. His journey contains uncertainty, pressure, emotional conflict, and difficult decisions, and those elements create the space for viewers to disagree with him while still caring about what happens to him. Zhang Linghe's apparent defense therefore resonated with fans because it invited them to reconsider the character through a more compassionate lens. Suddenly, conversations that had once sounded like simple arguments over whether Gong Ziyu was right or wrong became discussions about what he had experienced, what he feared, what he wanted, and how much responsibility had been placed upon his shoulders. There is something uniquely powerful about watching an actor defend a character who has already become emotionally important to millions of viewers. It creates a bridge between the fictional world and the real world, even when everyone understands that the character itself is fictional. Gong Ziyu exists within a story, but the emotions generated by his journey are real. Fans genuinely laughed at his lighter moments, worried when he faced difficult circumstances, became frustrated with his decisions, and celebrated moments of growth. That emotional investment does not disappear simply because the episode ends. Characters can remain in people's thoughts for months or even years, and actors who portray them can become permanently associated with those emotional memories. Zhang Linghe's connection with Gong Ziyu therefore carries a special significance because the role helped create a chapter in his own career while simultaneously becoming part of the personal memories of countless viewers. When he speaks about the character, fans naturally listen differently, because they know that behind the fictional identity is an actor who experienced the story from an entirely different perspective. Perhaps that is why the moment felt so emotional. It was not necessarily about proving that Gong Ziyu was completely innocent, completely correct, or beyond criticism. It was about asking viewers to understand, before judging. That simple idea can become surprisingly powerful when attached to a character whose actions have generated intense discussion. Human beings naturally want simple answers. We want heroes and villains, right decisions and wrong decisions, moments that can be clearly categorized. But meaningful characters rarely fit neatly into those categories. Gong Ziyu exists in the uncomfortable space between them, where good intentions can lead to complicated consequences and where strength can coexist with vulnerability. Zhang Ling seemed to recognize that complexity, and his apparent willingness to stand beside the character rather than distance himself from controversy became one of the most emotionally interesting aspects of the discussion. For fans, it was almost as though the actor was saying that before judging someone for the decisions they make, perhaps we should understand the world they are living in. And that idea carries an even deeper meaning when considering what actors experience while portraying emotionally demanding characters. Viewers see the finished performance. They see the polished scene, the carefully constructed expression, the dramatic music, the beautiful cinematography, and the final emotional impact. They do not see every moment that came before it. They do not see the preparation, the uncertainty, the discussions, the repeated attempts to understand a difficult scene, or the emotional energy required to make a fictional person feel real. An actor may spend an extraordinary amount of time thinking about why a character behaves in a certain way, even when viewers only see a few minutes of the final result. That invisible preparation can create an understanding that is difficult to communicate afterward. So when Zhang Ling appeared to defend Gong Ziyu, fans could interpret the moment as evidence of how seriously he had taken the role. Whether every viewer agreed with his perspective was almost beside the point. What mattered was the emotional sincerity with which the character seemed to be discussed. There was also a quiet tension in the way fans reacted because defending a beloved character can sometimes reveal just how much emotional responsibility an actor feels toward a role. Once an actor becomes closely associated with a character, criticism of that character can feel strangely personal, even though everyone knows the distinction between actor and role. Fans understand that distinction too, yet they often become emotionally attached to the connection. When Zhang Ling portrayed Gong Ziyu, he gave the character a particular expression, rhythm, presence, and emotional identity. Another actor might have created a completely different interpretation. That means the version of Gong Ziyu that lives in the memories of viewers is inseparable from Zhang Linghe's performance. His apparent defense therefore carried an unusual emotional resonance because it seemed to come from the person who had spent so much time bringing that character into existence on screen. As the discussion continued, another fascinating element emerged: the idea that a character can be misunderstood precisely because viewers care so much about him. The more emotionally invested people become, the stronger their expectations can become. Fans want characters to make the decisions they believe are correct. They want emotional conflicts resolved in satisfying ways. They want people they care about to avoid pain, betrayal, misunderstanding, and regret. But stories rarely offer such simplicity. Characters are often placed in situations where every decision carries a cost, and Gong Ziyu's appeal comes from existing within that difficult emotional landscape. When viewers become frustrated with him, that frustration itself can be evidence of emotional investment. People do not usually spend hours debating characters they do not care about. Anger, disagreement, disappointment, and passionate defense can all grow from the same source, attachment. Zhang Linghe's livestream moment appeared to remind fans that behind every controversial decision was a character designed to make viewers feel something. And perhaps the most touching part was the realization that defending Gong Ziyu did not have to mean defending every single action he took. It could mean defending his humanity within the story. It could mean recognizing that he was more than one mistake, more than one decision, more than one controversial moment. That distinction is important because fictional characters, like real people, are often judged according to isolated moments. One scene can become the entire definition of a character in online discussions, while everything surrounding that scene is forgotten. Zhang Linghe's apparent perspective encouraged a wider view, one that considered the entire emotional journey rather than a single moment. For viewers who had watched Gong Ziyu struggle, change, question himself, and continue moving forward despite uncertainty, this broader interpretation could feel deeply meaningful. The live stream itself became memorable because of that emotional atmosphere. There was no need for an enormous stage or dramatic production. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen in simple settings, when an actor is speaking directly to viewers through a camera and there is nowhere for the emotion to hide. A live stream can feel different from a formal interview because the distance between celebrity and fan becomes smaller. Expressions are visible in real time. Responses can feel spontaneous. The conversation can move naturally rather than following a carefully structured promotional format. That intimacy makes every serious comment more noticeable. When the subject turns emotional, viewers feel as though they are witnessing a more personal side of the performer, even while remembering that public live streams are still carefully observed moments. In this case, the attention surrounding Gong Ziyu transformed that ordinary digital space into something fans experienced as unusually meaningful. Millions of people may watch a performance, but each person experiences it privately. One fan may connect with Gong Ziyu because of his loneliness. Another may understand his pressure. Someone else may admire his determination. Another viewer may simply remember a particular expression or scene that stayed in their mind long after the episode ended. That is the extraordinary power of storytelling. A fictional character can become a mirror through which people understand emotions they cannot easily describe in their own lives. When Zhang Ling defended Gong Ziyu, he was therefore not simply talking about a character. For many fans, he was touching something they had personally felt while watching the story. His words became meaningful because they validated the idea that complicated characters deserve complicated understanding. The reactions also revealed something fascinating about fandom itself. When millions of people care about the same story, a single comment can become a spark that sends conversations in countless directions. Some fans analyze every detail. Others focus on emotional meaning. Some defend the character passionately, while others continue to debate whether certain choices were justified. But underneath those different opinions is a shared connection to the story. Zhang Linghe's moment became powerful because it gave fans something to talk about, something to interpret, and something to feel. It reminded them why Gong Ziyu had remained so memorable and why Zhang Linghe's portrayal had left such a strong impression. There is a certain tenderness in seeing an actor refuse to reduce a character to a simple label. It suggests an understanding that storytelling is not always about telling viewers who is right and who is wrong. Sometimes it is about allowing people to sit inside uncertainty. Sometimes it is about showing that a person can be brave and frightened at the same time, confident and uncertain, responsible and overwhelmed. Gong Ziyu's emotional appeal exists within those contradictions, and Zhang Linghe's apparent defense brought those contradictions back into focus. Instead of allowing the conversation to become another argument, the moment seemed to invite empathy. That invitation may be why the reaction felt so much larger than expected. Fans were not simply surprised by a comment. They were emotionally affected by what the comment represented. They saw an actor who seemed unwilling to abandon a character simply because the character had become controversial. They saw someone willing to acknowledge complexity instead of choosing an easy answer. They saw the emotional connection between performer and role, and they were reminded that behind every fictional character is a group of people who invested enormous effort into making that world believable. For Zhang Ling, Gong Ziyu may represent an important chapter in his acting journey, while for fans, the character represents countless hours of viewing, discussion, anticipation, and emotional attachment. And perhaps that is what made the moment so unforgettable. The strongest defenses are not always loud. Sometimes they are quiet, measured, and emotional. Sometimes they come through a subtle change in expression or the decision to explain rather than dismiss. Sometimes the most powerful statement is simply the refusal to see a complicated character as a single mistake. That emotional nuance gave the conversation its lasting impact. Fans were left wondering not only about Gong Ziyu, but also about what the character meant to Zhang Ling personally as an actor. Had portraying him changed the way he understood certain emotions? Had the character remained in his thoughts even after filming ended? Had he become protective because he knew the character's inner world better than anyone watching from the outside? Those questions may never have simple answers, but that uncertainty is exactly what made the moment so fascinating. Long after the livestream ended, the emotional impression remained. Fans continued discussing the moment because it had touched something deeper than ordinary entertainment news. It reminded them why they had connected with Gong Ziyu in the first place. It reminded them that behind every dramatic decision is a story, behind every controversial action is a context, and behind every character is a human performance that required someone to understand emotions from the inside out. Zhang Linghe's apparent defense became memorable not because it erased disagreement, but because it made room for understanding. And as the noise surrounding the moment gradually settled, one feeling seemed to remain stronger than all the arguments: Gong Ziyu mattered. He mattered enough for viewers to debate him, defend him, criticize him, remember him, and become emotionally attached to his journey. He mattered enough for Zhang Linghe's words to reignite conversations and make fans revisit the character with fresh eyes. Perhaps that is the greatest achievement a fictional character can have. Not perfection, but permanence. Not universal agreement, but the ability to make people feel deeply enough that they continue talking long after the story has ended. For Zhang Ling, the moment offered fans another glimpse into the emotional seriousness with which he approached the character. For those who had followed Gong Ziyu's journey, it felt like a reminder that the person they had watched on screen was never meant to be understood through a single judgment. His story was built from contradictions, emotions, choices, consequences, and growth. And when an actor appears to stand beside such a character during a moment of criticism, fans naturally feel that something meaningful has happened. They are reminded that sometimes the characters who stay with us the longest are not the flawless ones. They are the complicated ones. The ones who make us question ourselves. The ones who frustrate us and move us at the same time. The ones whose stories continue echoing in our minds even after the screen goes dark. That is why this emotional livestream moment continues to feel so powerful in the imagination of fans. It was never simply about whether Gong Ziyu was right or wrong. It was about understanding why he became so important, why Zhang Linghe's portray